I believe that it's easier to educate a person who has bias than it is to find someone who who thinks the way that you and I think when it comes to race. From my studies in surveying, this view is an extreme minority. This, numerically speaking, there's so few people who understand that skin color does not dictate character. And to find that person, I believe it's much more difficult. Sure, it would be ambitious to do so, but I've taken the stance of educating those people who don't understand this, instead of removing all of those, because that would be total anarchy. We would remove everyone from American power, from every element of our society, from our political system, from our education system, from our healthcare system, from our housing and banking and financial system. All of these systems and the leaders within them would be removed immediately, because they almost all have these views because they have been conditioned to have them. And so I think it's easier to educate these leaders, these corporate leaders, these community leaders, these political leaders, on the reality that until we look at people as unique individuals and their skin shade does not bear on their capacity, then we won't have meaningful progress. Because searching for the Wills and the Adrians of the world, I've been looking a long time, Will, and I find one in a couple of hundred like you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely agree. It's extremely rare. I guess what I would say to that is, yeah, I don't ever make decisions based on what's easier or more difficult, first of all. But like, second of all, I just solve problems. That's like what I like to do. And so the reason why I wouldn't see education as a solution to that problem is because I'm quite certain that the people who are using the racial hierarchy to their political advantage are well aware of their own bias, and they have no interest in removing it. They understand the destruction that it brings, and they don't care. There are those people in the world, and a lot of them are in power, and so that's kind of how power works. Like, power doesn't really care whether you what you want. Like, I mean, it just kind of happens to you if you're being overpowered. If you are overpowered, it's something that just happens to you, because that's what power means. It means that someone was able to achieve what they wanted over whatever you wanted. That's literally what it means. And so that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a situation. We're not dealing with a situation, I think, that education can solve, because as a teacher of many years, I know that in order for someone to learn, they have to be open to learning. And unfortunately, a lot of the barriers that I've encountered and discovered in trying to communicate with people about, the fallacy of race and all of its attendant consequences, I believe that they are so deep and strong that it's going to take a unique effort in order to break through that. I think actually you're saying it's easier, but like in my experience, the barriers that I face, they're literally at a level of pathology. So the same way that a lot of people look at racialized black people and their behaviors and their culture as being at a level of pathology in terms of behaviors. But yeah, like that's why, like I said, these people, a lot of them have no shame. They don't care. They'll literally say one thing one day and they'll say the opposite thing the next day and pretend like those two things match up. Like those are the kind of people that we're dealing with. They're not concerned about educating themselves. They are wielding power, and that is their mindset. So we need to get people in there whose mindset is about wielding power, but are going to wield power in order to perpetuate what you're talking about, which is making sure that people understand the unity of humankind and you know, the fact that we're all equal, you know.
Yeah. Well, here's I love the way you think, Will, and you have an open mind and the ability to express your views clearly, which there again, a lot of people just don't possess that trait. I want to paraphrase something that Killer Mike is famous for saying. And I won't say it exactly because it may get your show pulled, but he says in paraphrase, to get rid of your master. And he uses a different phraseology in this. And this is where I begin with our work through the pull movement, is almost every other organization, entity, nonprofit is focused on the outward trajectory and looking at how can we get people in power or affect other people so they can stop affecting us in certain ways. And I say us like you and me as individuals. And here's the problem with that philosophy. It trades one master for another. And it leads to this belief system that if we can just get the right master to rule over us, then we can be free. And I don't seek to empower people through the idea that fixing other people's views is somehow going to grant them some level of strength. I advocate that people must first see the power that's within themselves, not alone, but then group themselves not on the basis of melanin concentration, rather with people who have similar ideological frameworks as we do, people who have similar passions as we do, people who have similar interests and similar goals, and who can see the unique value in us because they see it in themselves. And this is where coalitions are formed, and this is how power movements are established.
Because I totally agree with all that.
Yeah, I don't even spend a lot of time, and because I don't spend time doing that, this is one of the critiques that I get in my work. It's, Adrian, you're not calling out other people enough. And I said, well, there's a lot of people doing that. There are people who are paid millions of dollars per year to do that. I spend time trying to take that kid who was told that he could not and tell him that he can, and showing him how he can, empowering him to endure and to overcome and to pursue his own level of excellence. And that's where I spend my time, with mentorship and to education, not the general public, because the general public will almost always be wrong. The masses are almost always wrong. And I don't spend my time trying to sway a populace of people. I look for the individual who wants to see, the one who wants to be educated, like you said earlier, who wants to understand how can they. And it starts with that person seeing themselves as a unique human being first, and then navigate through the systems that exist. As we navigate through these systems, advocating along the way for meaningful change. And if it never comes, if those changes for which we advocate never comes, continue to strive ahead and move forward. But that doesn't mean that we give up. And a lot of people have promoted that there is economic power in giving up in 2022. There is an incentive to quit and then to blame someone else. And this is not just limited to skin shade. This is a societal issue that people have been convinced that the way forward is to blame the other people, whoever they are, whether it's the other political party, whether it's the other country, whether it's the other skin shade, whether it's the other gender, whether it's the other economic class. Just blame the other group of people and then find someone who can lead your coalition to overtake them. And it's like, well, that's just reductionary. And what we find is that the people who are leading these groups and these cohorts are the ones who are making millions and billions and and thriving, and the ones who are following, hoping for some substantive change, they're worse off than they were before. And so I don't spend time in that arena. It's just because it's been tried before, and it's failed for literally thousands of years.
I mean, to me, you're talking about humans. That's what humans do, bro. Like, so I mean, like, I that's one thing, and then the other thing is, I agree with everything you said. Like, in terms of what we should do. I'm a teacher, my man. What do you think my job is? You know, what do you think I do? What do you think I spent so many years of my life doing? You know, is mentoring people and showing them that they can, and giving them a pathway and like everything else, right? Of course, I couldn't create a pathway for myself, but like, I'm still doing that, right? But I just, I don't see why it has to be an either or situation still. I don't understand the giving up part. I think that mentorship is critical, like you said. Teaching people about reality and the reality of race, or the fantasy of it, is important. But I don't think that we can simply ignore the power dynamics. I feel like that's basically what you're proposing. You even almost directly said it when you said, whether your advocacy results are favorable or not, you just keep moving forward. Well, that's what we're going to do no matter what, because that's what living is. But ultimately, if our goal, why wouldn't our goal be to actually advocate for something we get, like to actually try to get it, because that's possible. And you're right that like we haven't been successful over time. However, it's a unique time in history for doing something about this issue. I do think that there are possibilities available for us that have not existed in the past. And I think that that's why a lot of movements are being spurned, like your own and like mine and like my show. And there's a lot of other people out here doing stuff. I think that it's just very new. It's going to take some time to learn how to collaborate and to build the kind of coalitions you're talking about, the ones where we're, connected through our ideologies and our beliefs about, hopefully, that we're all unique human beings, but ultimately we're pretty much all the same. We're way more the same than we are unique, in fact. And so I think that's what we need to focus on. But I still don't see a reason why we shouldn't explain what reality is to people. In fact, whether we're talking about race or anything else, it's critical that people understand the world around them. It just is. Otherwise, you can't make decisions properly. Like, you can't teach someone to make decisions properly in an environment they're unfamiliar with, no matter what philosophy you give them. Ultimately, that philosophy is going to run into something that is completely foreign to them, like that they are ignorant of. When you run into something you're ignorant of, then oftentimes it can be dangerous if you are totally ignorant of something, especially when we're talking about the race context, Thanks for watching. For access to the full-length conversation and all of the 2-hour-long unedited conversations that I've had on race, click the support link in the description below. Thanks for your support, and see you next time.